Hey everyone, Judge Magister Phoenix, and this is a bit of a random video, but I am incredibly irritated right now. It's 11 o'clock in the morning on Monday. I haven't actually done any recordings at the weekend, but anyway, it's not about the recordings at the moment. Other than this video, I should get another video up today. I'm not quite sure, but I'm really irritated. So, back in December, I decided to spoil the ending of Lightning Returns because I was getting so excited about the game and I just wanted to know how they were finishing off the storyline. I already had considered FF13 2 a non-canon game because of the way that there was no thread to Final Fantasy 13 at all. There was literally the bare minimum thread that was connecting FF13 2 to FF13, and that really was just the characters. And let's face it, Sarah wasn't exactly a very big character in FF13, so it was the weakest piece of thread connecting the two games together. It was not a sequel. They should have called it FF13, let's just go all over the place in time. Because that's all the game was. It was a completely convoluted mess, and even the story was about convolution. It was ridiculously ironic. But I decided to spoil the ending for myself, and I was not pleasantly surprised with the absolutely crappy ending that Toriyama, the director of Final Fantasy XIII, the series, decided to make. It was probably the most arse-pulled ending ever made. Any dumbass, and apologies for the language, could have wrote that story, that ending. Anyone could have wrote that ending. Okay, a 5-year-old probably could have written a better ending than, and they all went to Earth. Honestly, I watched the ending and I was sitting there in utter disbelief that that's how they finished this storyline. Despite the fact it was completely convoluted, I quite liked FF13 2's storyline. It was different. Not very happy that it wasn't a continuation, but I took it on as a game of its own. It was a non-canon game to me. And I was thinking, okay. And of course that ending, let's talk about the Final Fantasy 13 2 ending. To be continued. Probably the biggest utter disgraceful ending you could ever slap on a video game, and it was Square Enix spitting in the fans' face. Square Enix just spitting in their fans' face with a to be continued. Yes, we want to make more money off this franchise, so we're going to milk it dry until dust is puffing out those nipples. I mean, seriously, to be continued. That's not how you finish a Final Fantasy game. That's probably the only Final Fantasy game to actually have a to be continued slapped onto the ending. That's why it's non-canon. Well, not just that, the whole storyline as well, but just the utter disgrace that they had the nerve to put to be continued on the end. I was very pissed off after playing Final Fantasy 13 2 and completing it to have a to be continued thrown into my face. And then let's look at Lightning Returns. To be continued? I don't think so. Lightning Returns is completely in another world, almost quite literally. It's in another time. It is not a to be continued. Yes, it has it has again a bare thread connecting it to Final Fantasy 13 and 13 2. Literally, the chaos has filled the world, and suddenly the world's coming to an end in Lightning Returns. But let's face it, it's not exactly continuing Final Fantasy 13 2 because you're suddenly thrust into this world that is so many millions of years after Final Fantasy 13 2. So it's not really a direct continuation. It's just another story. A story that I haven't even played the game yet, but I'm already pissed off with the story. Not just because of how it ends, but the fact that it's starting off millions of years after Final Fantasy 13 2. How can that then be a direct continuation? It can't be. So basically, Final Fantasy 13 2 saying to be continued was utter bollocks. And it pisses me off to no ends that that's how they finished it. If they'd have finished it off with, I don't know, something better than to be continued, and then that's how it ended, and then we went to Lightning Returns, I may be a little bit less pissed, but I'd still be pissed at the end of the day. Let's face facts. Anyway, let's get away from Final Fantasy 13 and 13 2 and move on to Lightning Returns. So I spoiled the ending for myself, very pissed off after I watched it. I could not believe that that's what they had decided to finish it with. Then I decided to do some research. First, I decided to research Toriyama, or whatever his first name is. Like, I don't know, I couldn't care less. Some Japanese name. No offense to any Japanese people, just literally the guy, I hate him, and he is an inept game director that should not be in the game industry at all. And it's ironic that he's completely sank the entire Final Fantasy 13 series, and yet they've put him on the board of directors that ensure quality in Final Fantasy games. It's just the irony. It's like, Square Enix, are you thinking this guy just sank one of your franchises because he's an utterly crap director, and you've put him on the director's board to ensure quality in Final Fantasy games? Are you listening to yourselves, or are you just dumb with no intelligence and ignorance is all that clouds your minds? Like, I want to slap you. I could run Square Enix better than you. And that's not being arrogant. It's just the sheer ignorance of all of you that run the company. Literally, anyway. So I decided to research him, and I found an interview. So I decided to read it. And lo and behold, Toriyama, I actually, before reading the interview, I read on a FAQ board or a forum that he supposedly he had this delusional love fantasy of lightning. So anyway, I read this interview, and sure enough, it basically answered my question. Does he really have a love fantasy for lightning? Yes, he does. He actually openly admitted that he wanted to marry her or someone like her. And this interview, the way they typed it up, it came across very serious. And I'm not going to say that they completely made this up, because there's no way they would just completely make this up. So basically, Toriyama has this delusional love fantasy for Lightning. He wants to marry her or someone like her. He's completely infatuated with this fictional character. Sure, I thought Lightning was pretty awesome. Her personality sucked in Final Fantasy 13, and it has throughout the rest of the games. She has a great voice actress, and it's a shame that she has to play a character that has no character development whatsoever. And that's the fault of the game developers, Square Enix, Toriyama. Literally, Final Fantasy 13, 13-2, and Lightning Returns probably as well, none of the characters got any proper development. So where normal people who play the game probably won't feel very close to them, or actually feel like they're actual human characters. It was a little bit different for me, because I get immersed in storylines pretty easily, especially when it comes to fantasy stories and such. So I got immersed into it pretty easily, and I liked the characters, even though the character development was terrible. But if you're looking at the normal person that might pick up and play this game, because at the end of the day, Square Enix should be appeasing the fans, but they should also be thinking about the other consumers. Okay, if they're trying to bring other people into the franchise, then they should be thinking, okay, we need to maybe make these characters a bit more human, so the normal people that don't usually play these types of games actually get to know them and feel like they're real, and actually like them. Give them some likability and some character. No! Square Enix, oh, heaven forbid you gave your character some development. Christ, all that matters is your pre-rendered CGI cutscenes, and they look absolutely beautiful. Why the fuck don't you just go into the movie industry? Honestly, if all you care about is pre-rendered cutscenes, and it has already been found out that they do those cutscenes way before they develop the game, why the fuck don't they just go and make movies, okay? Advent Children was pretty cool. They should just stick to making movies and not games. There'd be less unhappy, disgusted fans. Just saying. But anyway, so in this interview, yes, he admitted that he had this delusional love fantasy for Lightning. And then after that, one of the game developers said, yes, he made us work on her character model over story and development, ha ha ha. And then Toriyama said, yes, well, I felt like her breasts should have been a bit bigger, because it would represent her maturity throughout the game series. Really, Toriyama, that's I mean, what she was like 22, 21 when in Final Fantasy 13, way past puberty, probably no chance of her breasts growing any bigger, and you thought she needed bigger breasts to show her maturity. You just like every other 99% of the ignorant men that infest this world. I think you goddamn are. I cannot believe the utter it was ludicrous. I was gobsmacked. My jaw was wide open. I was just looking at these words. This guy had actually had his development team working on Lightning's breast and character model and her overly sexist costumes, because let's face it, she is really sexualized in Lightning Returns, and I find it disgusting that she's got so much skin showing, and some of these outfits that they've made for her, it's just utterly disgraceful. I mean, sure, I like a hot looking character while I'm playing my game. Doesn't mean I want her to be nude, and it's a video game. Don't over-sexualize your characters, because that just degrades them further. It's just degrading. You're not... Anyway. So, yes, I was looking at this interview, absolutely gobsmacked, that this idiotic, ignorant piece of shit director man had decided that his development team should be working on her model and her breast because she's maturer and they need to get bigger. I wonder how that happened. He'll probably find some ridiculous excuse to make them bigger. Oh, yes, well, she time travelled, so time travel sort of manipulates the breasticles and makes them larger, and yeah. Ding ding, thumbs up. But so basically they wasted their time changing her breasts and forgot about the story, character development, gameplay development. That's probably why we have Final Fantasy 13-2 and Lightning Returns with that whole, oh yeah, this feels really recycled feel. Because let's face it, if you look at both games, there's at least 90 or 80% of the enemies that appear in Lightning, or at least in Final Fantasy 13-2, and from what I've seen of Lightning Returns so far, pictures, videos, and the demo-wise, there's a lot of repeat enemies. Literally, Lightning Returns seems to have added a few more, and Final Fantasy 13-2, maybe a couple of extra ones, but most of them are just recycled enemies from Final Fantasy 13 coloured differently, and I'm sure it doesn't take that much to colour them differently. This is you don't just recycle old enemies and shove them in, and this brings me on to the point that Square Enix are just the fact that they turned Final Fantasy 13 into a cash cow, and it's very clear, and I don't know how people aren't getting this, and I'll move on to why I'm very irritated, but I don't know how people, the ignorant fucks that are out there, aren't getting this. But Final Fantasy 13-2 and Lightning Returns, it's clear they put no effort whatsoever into these games. The stories are completely convoluted. Yes, I'm sure it doesn't take that long to build a backdrop. If we look at the cities from Lightning Returns, the quality, yeah, it's not all there. I'm not saying graphics are everything, but that's a clear sign and definition of, yeah, we couldn't be bothered, we were too lazy, we were made to rush this game out and develop it in under a year, so we just shoved all this in. You're going to have to like it. So all of these different recycled elements, and I'm sure that there's some backdrops in Lightning Returns that are actually from Final Fantasy 13 that they probably didn't use. I wouldn't actually be surprised if Lightning Returns is literally just a chunk off of Final Fantasy 13-2. They literally just cut it off. Like, that was... Lightning Returns was actually part of Final Fantasy 13-2, and then they thought, well, wait, I mean... we really fucked up FF14, we really screwed over there, and we really want to, because we're just ignorant, we really want to, relaunch that game, because it was an absolute piece of shit the first time and didn't have a very good launch, so obviously it's going to have a better launch if we relaunch it, because we're so clever. Everyone's probably forgotten about that game already, Square Enix, I'm just saying. There's probably much better MMOs out there. I'm sure the first Final Fantasy MMO is still much better than FF14. But anyway, so yeah, we wasted all this money. So let's just cut off this part of the story and we'll sell it on next year. We can pretend that we developed it for a year, and then we can make more money off of the fans, because fuck the fans. We can't admit our own mistakes. We're just going to have to let the fans suffer for this one, our own mistakes. And that's literally what I look at Square Enix now. Just that they blame the fans and they make the fans suffer for their own mistakes. I mean, it's hilarious that news article way back when Square Enix actually blames the Western audience for their crumbling sales figures, when at the end of the day, Eidos Montreal, that's part of Square Enix, is actually the only part of Square Enix that's making any money. That's the only part, and that's a Western developer. All of their games, they're the only games that are actually making decent money. Hitman, I believe that sold quite a bit, and so did Tomb Raider, that latest Tomb Raider. And yet they blamed the Western audience for all of this loss in money, when it was really all of their own fault, because of all their games aren't holding up. If you look at Eidos' games, they're holding up pretty damn well. If you look at bloody Deus Ex, that was incredible. Then you look at Square Enix, FF14, utter shit piece. FF13, convoluted mess. FF13-2, convoluted shit piece. Lightning Returns, recycled convoluted shit piece that really should not be in this world. And then you look at Eidos Montreal and their games, and okay, Hitman didn't look like a great game to me. I heard that it wasn't the best, but at least it made money, and it was still probably a better game than Final Fantasy 13 will ever be. I never got my hands on it, so I can't obviously give it an entire experience, but it made more money. And yet they blamed the Western audience, and it's just like, well, perhaps if you actually made better games instead of just rushing them out after 2 or a year, every 2 or 1 year you decide to just throw it out there as a cash cow, maybe people might buy more of your games. The thing is, the fans, well, actually, I shouldn't say this because it's probably not true, but there are a 10% of gamers out there that actually aren't ignorant, are actually quite intelligent, and wait for the games to drop so much in price that then they're worth paying for. Because I'm telling you right now, Lightning Returns is not worth £40 to me. Final Fantasy 13 2 would not have been worth £40 to me. Luckily enough, I hadn't heard about Final Fantasy 13 2, which brings me on to another thing. How do you expect to make any money if you don't even advertise these damn games? Like, Lightning Returns has had more advertisement than Final Fantasy 13 2. Like, literally, I never saw Final Fantasy 13 2 at all. Final Fantasy 13 even. I didn't see much advertisement for that. But I got Final Fantasy 13 2 for £15 in Sainsbury's because it had dropped in price that quickly. However long it had been out, I don't think it had been out that long, but I know that in a couple of weeks I could go down to Sainsbury's, which is down the bottom of my road. Right now it's £38. It's cheaper than Amazon in Sainsbury's. Sainsbury's, a supermarket retailer that probably doesn't know anything about games anyway, is already selling it at £2 less than Amazon. Clearly Sainsbury's has got the right idea here. They know that it's a piece of shit. And in 2 weeks I could probably go down there and it'll be £20 or a tenner. And then I'll buy it, because it's not worth £40. I'm not paying full price for Lightning Returns, a recycled festering shit piece. Anyway, so yeah, cash cow, all of that shit out the way. Pardon my language, I am so annoyed right now. But the reason I am ranting and very irritated right now is I actually, way back in December, I was going around on Lightning. I was watching bits of Lightning Returns, like videos, trailers, and I was commenting. I was going, well, you know, how on earth can you? 2 seconds, people. 2 seconds. Yeah. I will not look at that right now. But yeah, I was looking at all these videos, and I did leave comments. I don't usually leave comments on videos. That's just something I don't do. But I wanted to leave comments this time, and they were comments saying how Toriyama only cares about Lightning's breasts, that he has a delusional love fantasy for her. Basically, what I've already said, I was writing down in these comments. And there was one particular video, which was the ending of Lightning Returns. Somebody had uploaded it because they were doing a playthrough. And I was saying how I was venting out on it because of how disgraced and disgusted, as a big fan of Final Fantasy 13, how disgusted I was that that's the piece of shit ending that they decided to throw into this game. I could have written an ending with 50 billion imagination points. 50 billion imagination points better than that ending. Honestly, I could have. I really could have written a much better ending for the game. In fact, I could have written an entire storyline that would have been much better than Lightning Returns. And I'm not being arrogant here, it's just the truth, okay? Seriously, an amateur writer, I mean, I guess I could class myself as an amateur writer, but even a novice writer could have written a much better ending than that, if not a story. And I left this comment on, and because someone said, so what happens at the end? What happens to them? Because if you look at the end, the epilogue, or even just the ending of the game, you don't even know what happens to half the characters. All you know is that Lightning shows up in the epilogue. So not only have they shoehorned in this shitty ending, but they haven't even... The characters they didn't even bother to develop, they didn't even bother to give a proper ending to them. Yes, we just have to assume that those little stars that they turned into fell to Earth, and yeah, Lightning is in France, and that's the end. And they had the utter ludicrousy to actually make her say the bloody crystal history Fabula Nova Chrysalis bollocks happened before you were alive, happened before the Earth, and Toriyama's basically saying that, yes, Lightning created our world, people. Lightning created Earth, and let's not get it wrong. She was in Paris. It's a cheap imitation Earth, but it's Earth, okay? It's not another planet. It's Earth. she actually says to the gamer before you were around. So please. Anyway, I left this comment, and soon enough, the person who made the video said, well, you know, it's an ending that makes sense, and, you know, they had to go with the whole Nordic history thing since they went with it when it came with Final Fantasy 13-2, they went with the history, and they had to continue it. Okay, yes, Valhalla was in Final Fantasy 13-2. I could see where they were going with the Nordic history, but no, they did not have to continue with it. To be continued, and then they didn't even continue it with Lightning Returns, because Lightning Returns is 1 billion years after Final Fantasy 13-2. How can you say that's a continuation? It's not. It's a completely different storyline that has the minute pieces of thread that connect it to Final Fantasy 13-2 and Final Fantasy 13. Anyway, basically, the reason I'm irritated right now is because ignorant people, lots of ignorant people keep replying to this comment I made, saying, one person said that Final Fantasy 13, the Final Fantasy 13 series made a lot of money, it was successful, and I shouldn't be complaining about the terrible storyline. Well, fuck you, sir. Fuck you, okay? Just because a game makes a lot of money doesn't mean that it's brilliant, it's a good game. No, game sales are what fanboys use as an argument base. Fanboys that are completely ignorant and think that the sun shines out of Square Enix's arse, or any fanboy, will use an argument, we use the game sales argument, oh well, my game made so much money, and that's why it's so great. No, it's not, you asshole. You know, you can't use game sales as a basis to say that a game is brilliant. The basis you use is if the game has good story, if the game has good gameplay, you know, all of those features that actually make a game, you know, not the pre-rendered awesome CGI that just belongs in a movie, and not the game sales just because it sold a lot of copies. Well, don't forget people. Let's not forget fanboys. I mean, you should know you're very ignorant. Ignorant people will buy anything, okay? Just remember those words. And that's why the game sales for Call of Duty continue to skyrocket, because ignorant people will buy the same recycled shit over and over and over again. If they see the sunshine, well, they delusionally see the sunshine. Oh my god, I'm so irritated. They see the sun shining out of the developer's arsehole, and anything that comes out of that is brilliant. And of course they're going to buy it, because their ignorance knows no bounds. But it's so irritating when people use game sales as the basis for an argument. That's not what makes a good game. A good game is a game that actually develops the characters, the story, the gameplay is fun, and it's immersive. And then somebody else decided to comment saying that the game, they did, so I basically commented saying how the game was incredibly, this is the person who decided to say that game sales were the basis for it being a great game. I ranted saying it was a very rushed game, it doesn't deserve its game sales, Square Enix deserves to go under and be bought out by someone so that someone can actually make decent games, and that Lightning Returns and Final Fantasy 13-2 spat in the faces of the fans of Final Fantasy 13, the series, and Final Fantasy altogether. And Square Enix couldn't care less about their fans. They would rather just use their games that people enjoy as cash cows. They half-ass their games, throw it out to the fans, make them... well, not make them, but because they're so ignorant, they buy it anyway, and use their games as cash cows, make the fans suffer for their own mistakes, which is utterly ludicrous. And then they had the nerve to reboot Final Fantasy 14 when it failed the first time. It failed. Leave it alone. Stop wasting your money. Stop fucking up your franchises, which, well, let's face it, you've done with Final Fantasy now. Final Fantasy 15 is going to be the last game if it doesn't actually hold up in terms of development, storyline, etc., etc. At least I hope it will be, but let's face it, I'm sure Square Enix will make some excuse to make Final Fantasy 15.1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 just to suck as much money out of it as they probably can. But anyway, someone decided to reply to that comment saying that for a rushed game, they did really well. It sold quite a bit, and for a rushed game, I have to give them credit. They managed to finish it off, and though the ending wasn't the best. They all got home in the end. Snow and Sarah can now have their wedding, and they did a great job for a rushed game. I just remembering the comment irritates me, because it just shows the utter ignorance of people nowadays, especially gamers. The problem with most gamers nowadays is they're so ignorant, and they will not stand up when they think that a game is wrong. They will not argue with the developer, because the developer has sun shining out their arsehole, and they'd never want to upset their favourite developer. They never would want to question them, because they're always right, because they're their favourite developer, and they would never do anything wrong for the fans. It's just so irritating that there's this much ignorance like in the gaming community, that someone is actually praising them for doing a great job, because they rushed the game, but they still did a good job while rushing it. They for rushing the game, they did a great job. You don't praise them for doing a good job for rushing the game out. They didn't do a good job. They rushed the game, but just because they rushed it didn't mean that they did a good job with what they did in that 1 year development. That was utterly ridiculous. 1 year development for a game like Final Fantasy is ludicrous. But you don't praise the developer for that. You bloody are. You shout and swear at them. You tell them how piece of crap it actually is. Rushing a game like Final Fantasy is terrible, and it just it's reflected in Final Fantasy 13 too, and Lightning Returns. You can tell how overly rushed these games are. Lightning Returns are. Lightning Returns had a year's development, and I bet in that year's development all they did is spend the time on Lightning's breasts. I'm sure that Toriyama had his development team making them, jiggle a bit more. Oh, can the right one be a bit puffier? Can the left one jiggle a little bit more? I just don't think the ripples are strong enough on that one, And it's probably because Lightning Returns, well, as I said, is probably just a chunk off of Final Fantasy 13-2 and pasted as Lightning Returns. I would not be surprised in the slightest, because if you look at the game, it's on a timer, and it has replay value. Apparently, you have to play the game over and over again, because you only got 13 hours at the end of the day, or 13 days to complete it and get to the ending. No wonder the game is so short and you have to play it over and over again, because it most probably is a chunk off of Final Fantasy 13 too. I would not be surprised if that was actually meant to be Lightning's storyline in Final Fantasy 13 too, if that was the actual ending. Lightning Returns is probably the ending to Final Fantasy 13 too. It's not a standalone game whatsoever, and it is clearly it's just reflected in all the information that you can pull from the games and the interviews. And it's just but I mean, this rant has gone on to a rant about the games, when I was really ranting about the sheer ignorance of gamers nowadays, especially these ones that keep commenting on my comments saying that they did a great job considering they rushed it and they made a lot of money with these games. I can't believe I've been going on for almost half an hour now ranted about this, but seriously, all I've got to say to those gamers that think that the sun shines out of Square Enix's arsehole: grow a pair of balls and start arguing. Start giving Square Enix negative feedback so they know how shit their games are. Don't be pulled into this delusional cone that you're in that makes you think that this game is incredible because Square Enix is incredible. They're not. They have turned into a festering shit piece of a company. All they're doing is milking their franchises. That's not the way to go about it. They're meant to be a games developer. They're not developing games. They're recycling games. Okay, I wouldn't be surprised if FF15 was made up from elements from FF13. I wouldn't be, well, no, actually, no, different development teams, but I wouldn't be surprised if a future game actually directed by Toriyama has a load of recycled crap from FF13. Well, we didn't use this in FF13, so let's just put it in this one and save ourselves some money and make the fans pay full price anyway. Ha 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 ha. But seriously, all of you ignorant gamers out there that think that the sun shines out of your developer's asshole, grow a pair of balls and actually grow a few brain cells and start to see that these developers are not the fucking sunshine out of their assholes. They're not godly. They're just. It's so hard to continue ranting when I'm just this irritated right now. It's my god, my throat, it's killing. But seriously, I just can't believe how many ignorant gamers there are out there just that will defend the company to the death and defend their decisions to the death and continue to praise these pieces of shit games till the end of the world. I just don't understand, like, how can people be this ignorant? How can they literally have no brain cells whatsoever? You know, I would continue, and I would, like, take a break and then think like, bring up my words, sort of push away the rage and structure an actual sentence, but I'm too pissed off right now. So I think I'm going to end this video here, but I hope you understand I hope you all get my rant here. Like, I hope you feel the rant. My word. Just no. Anyway, thank you for watching, or thank you for listening for this long if you did. I hope this was not lacking too much clarity, but I can understand if it did towards the end there. I was just getting pissed off, but yeah, I'm sure you all get what I was going for. Thank you for listening if you did. Please do comment. If you're one of those ignorant gamers that think the sun shines out the developer's arsehole, please just piss off. I don't want to hear your words. I don't want to hear, well, you know, they were really good game sales. They made a lot of money, and they, you know, for rushing the game, they did a pretty damn good job. No, fuck off. Okay, just, no, I don't want to hear you. And pardon all of the swearing in this video. I don't usually swear, but this situation demanded it. This rant demanded the swearing. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me. I hope you enjoyed my rant on Final Fantasy 13, that dickhole Toriyama, and all of the ignorant fucks that make up 90% of the gamers' society. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Take care and goodbye.